Hello again, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up first, had the flood advisory for the last several days up along the Susitna River at Curry due to the railroad being damaged actually here and closed. There's one photo of it there with the ice having shoved up and across the tracks. And here's another shot here of the ice completely covering the tracks and kind of trying to tip it on its side there. And that's costing them $1 million a day for each day that the railroad's closed. And I believe they're going to reopen it tomorrow. Anyway, satellite imagery, and that flood advisory has been canceled. Now for satellite imagery, system, a lot of clouds moving up over the southeast interior, down to the North Gulf Coast today. That brought some rain across Copper River Basin into the eastern upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country today, with otherwise the original front that was connected to this system here weakly dragging across the southeast coast and the southern areas, cooling it off considerably from what you saw yesterday, with also some little bit of light rain falling, just a few hundredths of an inch though in places there, and a little scattered back up to the north, only 4/100ths of an inch at Yakutat. But Cordova picked up 1/4 of an inch of rain during the day today, and Alyeska had 1/10 of an inch water equivalent of precipitation. Out here to the west, cold air mass associated with an upper level low, cold upper level low here, brought snow to the coast of the Kuskokwim Delta during the morning hours. That mixed with rain in the afternoon and became a little more showery in through here, a little more solid precipitation there, and then back out here to the west. And see another disturbance there coming over the top of this ridge of high pressure here, dropping southeastward. Otherwise, here's the moisture over the eastern interior, becoming more showery as you head on down to the coast, and then more of a rain condition there again, Cordova. Off to the east to roughly Yakutat or just to the west there at the showers here over the southeast coast. Again, very light. Amounts today are again ranging from 1 to 4/100ths of an inch of rain, and that's about it. Otherwise, some sunshine here. Koyukuk, Kobuk Valley back out to the northwest, and areas of fog, low clouds, and even a few flurries there for the central eastern Arctic coast, but high pressure. Light winds, dry conditions, system way down here to the south. That's going to hold through tonight with the high holding there. So winds will be quite light here across all the Aleutians and rainfall free. This system may bring some rain and snow showers back into the Pribilof Islands late tonight or early tomorrow. Otherwise, drying out here along the west coast and the Kuskokwim Delta. Kuskokwim Valley, a little bit better chance of seeing some moisture tonight. And also along this front with the upper level low still circulating over southwest Alaska. So still there'll be a few showers around south central Alaska tonight with mostly cloudy skies, but drier along the North Gulf Coast with diminishing showers. And best chance of precipitation will be over the northern southeast coast, none at all down south. And this moisture shifts off into the Yukon, so look for conditions to become more showery, maybe some partial clearing, dry in the north, fog flurries possible, eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And that'll basically continue through tomorrow as well. Patchy areas of fog, mostly on the east side there, maybe in the Chukchi Sea, through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. Could see areas of fog due to the light wind conditions. And a weak low here will keep showers going over the interior, northwest interior, or the west central interior, eastward along that trough axis, over to around the Eagle and just to the north, isolated showers, White Mountains into the Alaska Range. A little more numerous here along the North Gulf Coast, chance of showers south central Alaska tomorrow, Cook Inlets, Kenai Peninsula, and again over the southwest interior from northern Bristol Bay on up into possibly southern Kuskokwim Valley, Kuskokwim Mountain areas. And then that system keeps it pretty showery across the Pribilof, mostly cloudy skies, maybe some areas of fog as well, but winds light from Bristol Bay all the way out to Chimionat-2, high pressure building here. You can just see the precipitation shield with that next system beginning to come onto the picture late tomorrow afternoon. And the front finally kicks the winds up, but only at Chimionat-2 with a chance of rain on Wednesday, this high holding over the Bering Sea, and another low up over the interior. So light winds, areas of low clouds and fog. Also some clearing, could see some sun, Pribilof Islands, Nunivak Island, Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta, Aleutians, Adak, Atka, Unalaska could see some sun. Moisture streaming northward here around this strong high pressure area off the southeast coast. That'll bring rain to the Alaska Peninsula that will probably hit Kodiak Island tomorrow night, and then on Wednesday it'll continue through the day Wednesday with rain reaching the North Gulf Coast in the afternoon and also streaming northward into Cook Inlet. Best chance to the west there over toward the western Alaska Range, but low pressure in the interior. Look for quite a bit of rain and snow showers here with that system. Also across the Koyukuk Valley up to areas of the Brooks Range. North of the mountains, though, up there, dry and just some clouds with, again, patchy fog on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Winds not too bad here. It'll be partly sunny, partly mostly sunny here for the Panhandle with maybe some northwest winds of 5 to 15 miles an hour. Could be some gusts in the channel areas, maybe up to 20. Otherwise, that's about it. And again, chance of rain for the Alaska Peninsula on the Aleutian Range, but the Cold Bay on out will be dry, again with very light winds. And the low temperatures will be in the upper 30s here for the Aleutians during the night tonight, with mid-30s here over the Alaska Peninsula, lower 30s right around the freeze point for St. Paul, Macoriac, and 29, the forecast low for Gamble. Tanana Valley, Fairbanks area, 40 for the low, otherwise 30s here. Mid to upper 20s for the Brooks Range, and mid-teens eastern Beaufort Sea coast, otherwise near 20 Central Coast and mid-20s on the west side. And the Panhandle lows mostly in the lower 40s, mid to upper 30s along the North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, and 35 to 40 for south central Alaska. Highs tomorrow afternoon, mid to upper 50s. Could see a couple areas could push into the lower 60s up there. But cooling off back to the west to the mid-30s along the coast there, like at Shishmaref, mid to upper 20s, Arctic coast. Coolest on the east side, warmest there at Point Lay. And south central Alaska, upper 40s to lower 50s. Could see mid-50s sit in the valley. Upper 50s to near 60, southern southeast coast. Cooler up to the north there with highs just barely reaching 50. And then for the lows Wednesday morning, shaping up like this, mid-30s, northern Panhandle to lower 40s, either out along the coast or down toward Dixon Entrance, with mid to upper 30s, or upper 30s along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Copper River Basin, lower to mid-30s, some areas dropping a little below freezing there from the Copper River Basin in the clear higher valleys there into the Tok Northway area. Otherwise, greater Fairbanks area on out to Tanana, upper 30s. Same thing all the way up to the Brooks Range and falling back into the mid to upper 20s at Anatuvik there and over at Arctic Village with upper teens, mid to upper teens, eastern Arctic coast, 20s back to the west, lower to mid 30s over the deltas. And for the highs following the next following day, back into the 60s here. Upper Yukon Valley, mid 60s for Eagle, all the way down to, call it Tok there in Northway, upper 50s for Fairbanks to maybe the lower 60s as well, and 50s south central Alaska, 50s to lower 60s for the Panhandle. Looks like warmest again down south toward Metlakatla.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
IFR up along the central eastern Arctic coast here from up the coast from Point Lay there on over to, say roughly close to Barter Island, but not quite. VFR through much of the central interior here from the Alaska Range south. Looks like marginal VFR with IFR mainly along the mountains, IFR along the Coast Range, IFR here over the Kilburick-Gaukeland Mountains on out to Cape Newenham, and IFR Chukchi through the strait to St. Lawrence Island. VFR out over the central western Aleutians, but marginal for the Pribilofs, and southern half of the Panhandle VFR, northern half starting out with some IFR up north, which becomes VFR across the entire southeast coast in the afternoon tomorrow. Marginal VFR up along the coast. Prince William Sound possibly looks like to about the Chugach Range northward there into the Talkeetnas, but interior looking really good. IFR central eastern Arctic coast. Marginal VFR out west here, especially over the Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay, in across the southern Kuskokwim Valley to western Cook Inlet. Marginal for Kodiak Island, and then a little bit less VFR now out over the western Aleutians. And for Wednesday morning, still VFR there for Shimmy and Attu, marginal from there all the way up to the southwest coast. IFR, north side of the Seward Peninsula, portions of the North Slope, eastern Beaufort Sea coast. A little less in the way of VFR over the central interior, but still pretty good there from the Yukon Flats, Tanana Valley, back to the west. And IFR, eastern Kodiak Island, slipping on up into Kamishak Bay, southern Kenai Peninsula, possibly into western Prince William Sound. And the southeast coast stays VFR. And that stays VFR through Wednesday afternoon. So we've got IFR up north again along the Arctic coast, down to the Strait, western Seward Peninsula, and patch of marginal VFR here in the afternoon over the southwest. Looks like about the lower and mid Yukon and Kuskokwim Valley there into the northern Kuskokwim Valley. Marginal VFR, Bering Sea. IFR starting to slip up into the far western Aleutians, and IFR continues southern eastern Kodiak Island northward there, possibly into western Prince William Sound, VFR to the east. And for passes, Anatuvik, VFR becoming marginal tomorrow. Adigan will have about the same trend. And then for Lake Clark and Merrill, looks like it'll be mostly marginal. And a marginal day for Rainy. Windy though, VFR. And then back into the marginal VFR for Isabel. Then Mentasta back to VFR and Tanita, VFR. With Portage, marginal VFR. And Chilkoot and White improving throughout the day, maybe starting out IFR, could only be marginal, but becoming VFR later on. And for the freezing levels tomorrow morning, 4,000 foot, kind of a milder pocket here over the central interior. Otherwise, quite low on the snowfall levels here, south central Alaska back out to the southwest coast. And 2,000 feet here over the northern panhandle. We're about 4,000 down toward the southern coast of the north side of Dixon Entrance. Warmer air out over the western Bering from the central Aleutians to Shimia. And for icing, a couple of surges here. One right along Kodiak Island, another up along the North Gulf Coast area of Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, and south central Alaska. And then some scattered areas of mixed icing possible. All of the light variety above about 4,000 feet. Looking at the jet stream, upper level low, cold upper level low. The same one that brought the snow to the Kuskokwim Delta coast this morning, still out there tomorrow morning, and some of that colder air aloft slips into south central Alaska, ridging, holding back out to the west there, and the main Pacific jet well to the south, kind of splitting one branch coming up only at 60 knots into the panhandle. 9,000 feet, high pressure at this elevation out there southwest or south of Shimia, northerly flow, maybe up to 35 knots there across central Aleutians, but very light winds with this weak system here over Kuskokwim Bay. Maybe 20 knots, Kodiak Island into the Alaska range, but 5 to 10 knots up north. And the southeast coast, south-southwest becoming southwest to west over the southern panhandle, but only at about 10 knots. 3,000 feet, very light winds continue. Light southerly flow, 5 to 15 or less over the interior. Turbulence, not much to speak of, just over the northern southeast coast.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. As you well know, you can get forecast information for any day of the week. Today, tonight, tomorrow, out to 6 or 7 days. It includes the high and low temperature, the wind direction, the chance of rain or snow in your part of Alaska. But did you know that there is information available to forecast out to 2 weeks? So the question is, how would you use that information? And here to answer that question today and tell us a lot more about climate services from the U.S. National Weather Service Alaska region is Rick Toman. He's the program manager for the Climate Science and Services. And Rick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
How would we use information that is out to 2 weeks instead of just the high and low and the chance of rain?
Well, Dave, as we move out in time, of course, forecasts become more uncertain. So as we move into that second week from now, we're not looking at specific highs or lows or precipitation amounts at any given place. What we can do with the state of the science at this point is get a handle on patterns. So we can say things like increased chances for stormy weather in the Bering Sea in 2 weeks, or we've been in a cold weather pattern. Looks like 8 to 10 days from now, that pattern's going to change. Those are the kind of forecasts that we can currently make in that second week.
So you're increasing lead time for perhaps big or small weather events and telling us the likelihood of maybe more coastal storms or wind events in some areas?
Those are the kinds of things that that we hope to be able to let Alaskans know in the second week forecast. And if you have an activity or an event that you would find that kind of advance notice useful, whether it's moving stuff off of the beach, whether to go out hunting or to come back from camp, those kind of decisions, the week 2 provides the opportunity for you to get a handle on that kind of information.
Okay. What other type of weather impacts that we're familiar with might Alaskans use climate services for?
Well, in the forecast realm, we can go provide some information from this week 2, say the 8 to 14 day period, on out to the monthly and even seasonal time scale. Now, those monthly seasonal forecasts are still kind of just really very much pattern dependent, and the amount of detail that we can provide at this point is still pretty limited. Generally, indications of how temperature and precipitation will fall in maybe above normal, below normal kind of range. But in the week 2 period, we can be considerably more specific than that as far as the general patterns and really the impacts on Alaskans.
Okay, so we would be talking about generalizations there that would tell us that the period might be more stormy, might be more hot, more dry, more cold, and situations like that.
That's correct. So we're not going to be able to say in which community, for instance, there's the threat of coastal flooding, but we can often be able to tell we're moving into a pattern that would be conducive to big Bering Sea storms. So if you're in an area that could potentially impact you, you'll want to pay attention to the weather forecast.
Okay. Now, every day and every hour of the day, the National Weather Service is working on a forecast for the next day. But how do you start your forecast process for that extended period that goes out beyond 7 days?
Well, the way things work right now, we start off with the expected general flow pattern for Alaska and the whole world, really, and then we narrow that down to Alaska. So we start off with the basic computer model forecast. There's quite a few different computer models that we look at, bring those together. And then another important part of that is we attempt to assess the confidence. The reality is often 2 weeks away, the computer models are very divergent. They have lots of different solutions, and that's an indication that we don't have much confidence. But when we see more agreement in that time frame, and when that agreement is a pattern that will be potentially very impactful for Alaska or is a big change from what we've been in, that's when we can then take that expected pattern. We have computer models forecasting it. We've assessed the confidence. Now we can move that forward. How, using our experience as Alaskan weather forecasters, how does that typically play out for Alaska? So is this a stormy pattern for the Bering Sea? Is this an extra rainy period for Southeast? Is this the kind of pattern that generates strong winds potentially in the Anchorage Bowl? Is this a deep cold pattern for the interior? All of those are the kind of things that we're looking at in these large-scale patterns. That's very different than telling you that the winds on 10 days from now are going to be gusting to 120 on the hillside. We're looking for patterns, not the very specific information that the Weather Service will then hone in on as the event gets closer.
So the idea is to keep the 5, 6, 7 day forecast the same, where you are getting the standard high and low temperature and the chance of wind or rain, but further out you get a broad general forecast, but as the time gets closer to that event, we'll get a lot more specific.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So how can people use this information if I am out in the bush and I want to see, is a coastal storm expected in my region, or is a chance for that improving over the next 2 to 3 weeks? Where could I go to get information like that?
When we see that potentially impactful or a big change in the weather is coming 8 to 14 days out, typically we will start to highlight that on the Weather Service Facebook site. We might produce a YouTube video highlighting that, linking that on our Facebook site. So often at this point, we don't have much to say in that because we're really looking for those forecasts of opportunities. But one thing we can say very likely as we go through the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be more and more of this kind of forecast information available in that week 2 time frame.
Okay, and something that emergency managers and city planners and folks in villages might be interested in keeping an eye out for, looking for that information to be headlined, whether that's on social media or perhaps through the National Weather Service channels there to get information from you to make better plans a little bit longer term and make better preparations in the event that things become a little bit more unsettled.
Absolutely. Climate Services with the National Weather Service Alaska region is talking to the state of Alaska every week, apprising them of that 2-week outlook. And on the social media side, we are working to keep Alaskans informed so that when we think we have some confidence in a high impact or a big change, that's the best way right now for folks to find out about that. Twitter, Facebook, so stay tuned to your National Weather Service.
Very good, a developing program. Rick Thoman with the National Weather Service Alaska region. He's a Climate Science and Services Program Manager. Thanks so much for joining us again, Rick, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Great, thanks, Dave.
For another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis. Showing about the same thing we've seen for the last couple of days. Virtually no ice left in the Bering Sea and open water here off the western coast and down in the Chukchi Sea. Still this strip of heavier ice right through here in the Whiter area. And moving on to the coastal water forecast here. Look for northerly winds 15 to 20 knots on the south coast with lighter west-northwest winds up to the north there. Those seas down to 6 feet here, the entire stretch of the coastline. Small craft advisories are Clarence Strait northwest at 25, 4-foot seas, northwest 15 for Stevens Passage. South winds at 20 for Lynn Canal. And for Wednesday, south 15, dropping off a little bit there for Lynn Canal. Northwest 15 Stevens Passage, picking up to 20 knots, a little lighter than tomorrow for Clarence Strait. Small craft advisories on the south coast, 25 knots out of the northwest, that diminishing back to 15 on the extreme north coast. And for Prince William Sound, light southeast breeze tomorrow, 2-foot seas, south 10 for the eastern North Gulf coast, the west side southwest at 10. Really light winds here across the Gulf and up to the Prince William Sound area. Northern Cook Inlet, 10 knots from the south, about 15. Southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, and south 15 for the Barrens. Then bring in the small craft advisories on Wednesday for the western North Gulf coast, east 25. Same thing for the Barrens, northeast 25. Kamishak Bay sees building 7 to 9 feet in those areas. Southeast 20 for the eastern North Gulf coast with 8-foot seas. Winds remain light in Prince William Sound and rather light for Northern Cook Inlet. And for Shelikof Strait tomorrow, light southeast breeze at 10, otherwise southeast 15 there for Kodiak. Sitkinak, Castle Cape, east 15, then Castle Cape on down to Cape Sarachev, northeast at 15. Light winds there on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula out of the west and turning southwest at 10 for Bristol Bay. It sees just 3 feet. And those become northeast on Wednesday, 15 for Bristol Bay, 20 knots here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Pacific side, northeast 25, 7-foot seas. And up towards Sitkinak, they turn east at 20, southeast 20 here for the east side of Kodiak, Shelikof Strait, northeast 25 knots. For the Fox Islands tomorrow, east-northeast 10 to 15, becoming more northerly here in across the central Aleutians. But only 15 knots, high pressure making for light winds across the entire Aleutian chain, east-northeast at 10 to 15 on the western zones. And then those pick up with that next system edging its way eastward here. Far western Aleutians, probably Kiska Island on out, east 30 knots, 13-foot seas, otherwise 20 knots here west of Adak. Adak and Atka themselves, north 10 to 15, and a little bit breezier here, especially for Unalaska Island. North 20 to 25 knots with seas 5 to 8 feet. And for the Southwest coast, west winds at 10 tomorrow, pretty light, 3-foot seas. Northwest 10 for the Pribilof, same thing for St. Matthew Island. Light northerlies at 10 there for St. Lawrence Island, and light winds for Norton Sound. Southwest 10 for Norton Sound on Wednesday. St. Lawrence Island, light west winds, north winds at 10. North of Nunivak Islands, north 15. South of the island, northwest 10 here for from the Pribilof Islands back up into the northern Bering Sea. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, east winds 15 knots, about 10 knots for the central coast, then back up to 15 on the west side. Cape Beaufort to the Bering Strait, north-northwest at 10. And then for the Wednesday outlook, for those zones, basically north, give or take there, only at 10 knots. East winds continue at 15 for the west side, 10 knots central coast, and east at 15 for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Tonight again, showers over the northern panhandle, dry down to the south, remnants of that front gone now, and scattered showers along mainly the eastern North Gulf Coast, drying out Prince William Sound. Chance of showers Kodiak Island with this trough here in the upper level system right over the southwest interior. So rather low snowfall levels. So look for rain or snow into the Kuskokwim Valley, Kilbrook, Auckland Mountains, maybe the Kuskokwim Mountains into south central Alaska, especially up here to the north, but dry farther to the north, and basically fog and flurries in the Arctic coast. And then for tomorrow, scattered isolated showers over the interior, mostly sunny over the southeast coast with northwest breezes, and showers for the North Gulf Coast. And then for Wednesday, moisture and rain slide on up to the North Gulf Coast, hitting Kodiak Island tomorrow night. Thank you for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.